let's go ahead and get started again. So, next question that I have to ask you is, just give me some ideas, some thoughts that you might have. What are some good ways to help folks on the street? What do you think? Okay, now Mona, I just want to warn you ahead of time, you only get 2 answers. You need to leave some for the other students, okay? I'm just letting you know. All right, I saw her list ahead of
I
time.
used to be shy, if you can believe that. They used to run out the window. What I find overall is asking the homeless themselves, how can I help you? What do you need? And it's not always material things. One person recently, who's Mary, our friend downtown, she said to me very recently, self-esteem. I'd like a class on self-esteem. I want a support group. That's huge.
Yeah. Okay, so first thing, and this is really important, is before you help the homeless, you got to ask.
Right.
You got to sit down, get to know somebody, and ask. Yes.
Socks are a big thing.
Yes.
Socks are a big thing, and in fact, usually if somebody is looking for just this is the instant thing that I need right now, it's socks. Socks are important. Feet are essential. We like feet, and if you're on them all day, you really need to take care of them. Yeah. What else?
Acknowledgement that they're a valuable person and they, would like to have conversation, and there's some sort of support that way or encouragement just through communication.
Just to help them feel, once again, we talked about this before, the one thing that's in common with all homeless folks is they don't have a support network. That means relationships are at a low ebb, and people that you trust are at low ebb. So, having a conversation, sitting down and talking to someone, that's essential. Yep. What else?
Well, you can get them food.
Food is excellent.
Yeah.
Never had, I've never had anybody turn down food. Well, I guess it depends on the food. Sometimes I have these really hot chips, and not everybody likes those. Anyway, but yeah, food is good. Food is very helpful. Yes, sir. Not just a glass of water, you get water bottles. This is the thing, is that a lot of times certain cities are trying to ban water bottles. You know who needs water bottles? Homeless people need water bottles because they need to be able to have something. And it's really great because you can get some of the really nice sturdy water bottles. And a lot of places like Fred Meyer's and others, their water fountains have places that you can put water bottles in and refill them. Those are excellent. Also, if a person has a camp, usually they'll need like gallon jugs of water, that kind of thing. So that's really good. What else?
Well, of course, money, but I've always, when I give them money, I just say, oh, please. I said, I don't know you that well, but if you just please don't buy alcohol or cigarettes with it, I really appreciate it.
Okay. I just want to tell you, when somebody is if they're going through withdrawals, they're going to spend it on their addiction, whatever it is. Okay? They will tell you whatever it is that they need to tell you in order to do that. So let's just admit that at the fore. However, if you see somebody who is holding a sign, let's say, and they're looking for money or something like that, some of them will use it on their addiction. Some of them will use it on maybe a single beer, so that way they can get to sleep at night, and a motel room. We can't make assumptions about anybody either. So money is sometimes really helpful, and sometimes it's really not helpful. The hard part is to know if you're dealing with a total stranger, you don't know whether it's helpful for them or not. And so, yes?
Also, I feel like with money, there's just so many other places where you can go give money that would do a lot more, Marty Cooper does Night Strike sometimes, which is downtown on the bridge, and they're like, hey, we really encourage that you guys don't give money to people, instead give money to us, and we can stretch that dollar a lot more than they can.
And that can be true, although I will also say that certain organizations are money hogs. If you have any organization, and Night Strike's not one of them, but if you have any organization that is giving tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars to their CEO, don't give to that organization. don't give to them because it's not going, the money's not going where it needs to go. So do your research, find out what's going on. But there is no organization that is going to give a motel room to somebody for a night. There is no organization that is going to provide the thing for the person on the street corner that they need right at the moment. And what they need right at the moment may very well be a pack of cigarettes. Otherwise, they're going to go home and start screaming at their girlfriend. You don't know. You don't know. They know what their situation is. All I'm saying is money is complicated. That's what it really is. Money is complicated. Not always, not the best thing to give. Definitely not a good thing to give to someone who is a stranger. What else? Gift cards. There are certain gift cards that are great. Fred Meyer's gift cards. Because you can give a Fred Meyer's gift card and it won't be spent on alcohol or tobacco.
So that's
They may
excluded?
resell it to somebody else, but that's beside the
That's
point.
excluded on the gift
That
card?
is excluded on the gift
Oh,
card.
cool.
Yeah, Aaron.
That's neat.
I don't know how exactly tangibly you do this, but I think safety is a big thing. You can find a way to create safety somehow.
To create safety.
Even just for temporary or
Mhm.
for time, whether it's short term, I've had it happen, someone staying in your backyard.
Somebody stay in your backyard, or maybe opening your church for overnight shelter, like especially when it's cold. That's a really good thing. I've heard some people do that. And so, Mona.
One of the things also is I get a lot of requests for help with obtaining IDs and birth certificates
Yeah.
because they get lost. They're carrying their possessions with them constantly. So with that, lockers or some kind of place that they can have storage in between the soup kitchens and where they camp. I'm gonna throw that in together with that.
So that's one thing. That is a thing that's a big need, is getting IDs for people or something like that. Nobody is able to progress their life in this society unless they have an ID.
Fred Meyer
Um,
has safety lockers that you can buy.
Well, and so safety lockers is a,
Little boxes that,
Uh-huh.
you can, put in your code. It's not a key, it's a code. You put in your
own personal
your
code.
numbers,
Yeah.
whatever.
And
you
so-
want to lock it, and then you
Nice.
So yeah, so Fred Meyer's has got lockers. A lot of UPS stores have lockers. So these are also good things. One thing that a lot of folks on the street, they rather than carrying their possessions with them all day, if they can have a locker for the day, that's really helpful. So these are all really good ideas. These are all really good ideas. Let's talk for a minute in general terms. What are some of the general things that homeless people need in order to function? So, yeah. Did you want?
health insurance occurs to me.
Oh, health insurance. This is one thing that's really great. Now about 40% of people who live on the street actually have jobs, usually part-time jobs. But for almost anyone who is on the street, Oregon Health Plan covers them. And a lot of times, all they need to do is go to a clinic or something like that to sign up for health insurance. And sometimes that's hard. But sometimes they just need a friend or somebody like that to take them there and say, hey, let's do that. So let's talk in general about some general areas of helping folks. So first of all, there is relief. Okay? So there's relief, and when we're talking about, I'm talking about categories that are generally used internationally to help poor people. What is it that different ways to help poor people? So if you're going to go to, whether it be Haiti or whether it be downtown Portland, you're going to offer relief. That means you're going to help someone survive that day. Doesn't make any plans for the future. You're just helping someone survive that day. If you give someone food, you're providing relief. If you are giving someone, money, you're providing relief. If you're giving someone a place to crash for the day, that's providing relief. Okay. In other words, you're meeting an immediate need, but it doesn't solve any future problems. It doesn't solve the overall crisis. And a lot of people say, oh, well, that's just relief, that's not important. Of course, relief is essential. It is absolutely essential because in order to have people be helped tomorrow or next year, they have to survive today first. So relief is really important, and there's a lot of organizations that provide relief work, providing like Night Strike. Night Strike is a great example of a really excellent relief work that goes to downtown Portland once a week and provides food and some basic goods for people to just make it through. Second kind of category I want to talk about is opportunities. Opportunities. This isn't the same as relief because there's a certain level of responsibility to be able to do this. So, for instance, there's an organization in Portland called Join. And Join contacts homeless folks and they get them apartments, ideally. They get them apartments. However, they're there and they're providing help. They're providing a deposit so people can get an apartment. But the sustaining of that apartment, especially after 6 months, is up to them. They have a lot of responsibilities that they've got to take on themselves. They've got to be ready to take an apartment, to be able to manage the apartment. They have to be ready to be able to deal with the neighbors and think about their needs. And they're going to have to be ready to start paying the rent in that place in 6 months. So they're taking that on. So it's an opportunity, it's a great opportunity, but it also has responsibility. Not everyone on the street is ready to take on that responsibility. So it's something that a person has to be in the right place in the right moment for. That's the same for treatment. That's the same for getting a job. These are all opportunities and they can be life-changing, but not everybody is ready at a particular time to be able to go through these, to take that opportunity, because there's responsibilities involved there. Okay, so first, relief to help someone survive. Second, something that can really change a person's life, but they're going to take responsibility on it themselves. Third thing is development. So let me give you an example of development. Let's say that there is a desperately poor village in India, a village of poor people, and someone comes in and says, what I want you guys to do is get together, talk about a project that you want to do. Now, I'll go over here and I'll get the money to be able to provide for that project, but you guys make the decision about what the project is going to be and how it is that you're going to sustain that project. It's going to be your baby, your thing. We're going to provide finances to be able to make that happen. So the people who want to help make this decision get together in a village and they talk and they argue and they may spend months trying to figure out the project that they want to do that's going to change their village. And maybe they decide that they want to have a filtered running water system, because up to this point they had a well that they had to walk to miles away. And now they're talking about, let's make a system so that way we can have running water to our village, and it'll be clean water, clean filtered water instead of just well water. So they decide on that project. The person goes, raises the money for that, in this case very quickly, and then comes back with some experts who train them to set up and to build this project, which they sustain themselves. That's development. Can you think of any development projects that are going on in Portland right now that are like that?
Yours, the garden at
Okay, I'm surprised. Okay, yeah, so there is a community garden at Red Barn, my facility, which was begun and initiated and continued, folks on the street. It's beautiful. Yeah, Sam?
Hazelnut Grove.
Good. So Hazelnut Grove, also Right to Dream 2, also Forgotten Realms, and other. You guys are always forgetting mine. Forgetting my baby. Anyway, so there are communities or sustainable official camps that is initiated by folks on the street, and they sustain it and they plan it. There are some help coming in from outside. For instance, the city provides porta potties and dumpsters, so that way they can, or trash pickup, so that way they can have a sustainable thing. And there's other folks who may provide some food sometimes and other things, but for the most part, this is begun and sustained by homeless people for homeless people. It is a community, these are community builders, not just within the homeless community, but they're community builders with other neighborhoods. So that way neighborhoods have a different idea about what homeless people are. What has been shown again and again and again is that if a quote expert comes into a poor community, whether it be homeless or a village in India, if an expert comes in and says, this is what you need to do and we're going to do it for you, then that community continues to be poor. That community continues to struggle and to be able to have trouble keeping going. But if someone comes in and says, no, you do it, you decide, you figure out how you're going to do it, then that community learns how to sustain themselves. They learn how to get going. They find the resources, they keep it going, and they find the knowledge that's necessary to keep things going, because someone isn't just handing it to them, they're providing the biggest of all opportunities, the opportunity to create community, to develop their own support network. And so a lot of times that's really helpful. There's one other general way that is done internationally to help people who are poor, and that is activism. In other words, informing governments, corporations, and other kinds of powers that certain aspects of what they are doing are hurting the most vulnerable of the people who are around them. And that could be going over and protesting a sweep that is going to kill some people if they do it. A sweep that happens in winter is going to kill someone. That's just a reality. If a government, like last year, when they were going to sweep Forgotten Realms, then we made an alternative idea. Instead of sweeping them, to moving them to a different place, which, by the way, the government did not approve. They said, well, we're not going to do that, but on this date, in January, we're going to sweep them, we're going to move them. And so me and a couple others went to the city government and said, well, how about this? How about instead of sweeping them, we take a certain number of people and we create another community? And the city said, I don't know anything about that. And then they turned around and said, yes, do that. Just don't tell me where you're going to put them. So we did. That's exactly what they did. They're still there. That's Forgotten Realms. And what's that? Yeah. Anyway, and so the thing is that that's the kind of activism. It's a compassionate activism that is going to help inform the government or do actions that for the government in order to be able to sustain the lives of the most vulnerable populations. One thing that I want to remember, though, when we do all of these acts, whether it be relief work or anything else, it is almost always better to work with organizations that are already out there. A number of times a week, the city of Portland gets a phone call from somebody who has the brilliant idea of giving food to homeless people in downtown Portland, because nobody else had thought of that before. And the city of Portland will tell them, maybe you want to connect with, let's say, Night Strike. Maybe you want to connect with Potluck in the Park. Maybe you want to connect with some of these other organizations that are already doing that. And get connected with them and do that. Or, they say, Maybe you want to connect with a group like Free Hot Soup, and who is giving food all over town, because we actually have a lot of free food in downtown Portland, and maybe there's other areas of town that could use help in other places. And if you get hooked, and so all I'm saying is, if you have a brilliant idea to help the homeless, probably somebody's already doing it. And it's rather than reinvent the wheel, let's find out who's already doing it and get in touch with them. Now, mind you, in St. John's, there's not a lot of, and we're going to talk about that in just a second, there's not a huge number of opportunities to help folks. But we'll talk about opportunities to be able to get together and create an organization that'll help folks locally, okay? So, but it's important to work with other people. Don't try to do something, or I shouldn't say don't try to do something by yourself. Go out and meet people. It's always good to go out and meet people and talk to people. It's always good. If you see someone on the street, you never met them before, say, hey, what's going on? What's happening? And talk to them. That's great, you know? But it's always, you're going to increase your efforts more if you're involved in an organization. Okay, so let me just say a couple things that I talked about for activism. There's some very low-level things. Just because you're doing activism, it doesn't mean you have to participate in protests. You don't. That's not necessarily the only thing to do with activism. It helps. There are good things about that. However, as I kind of learned the hard way, if you get involved in protests, you could get arrested. Okay, so, you know, be aware of these things. There are things you can do. Remember I told you that there's this one camp that has 400 people that are being called on it, people who are complaining about this camp. What the city almost never gets is phone calls saying, this camp is doing really good. This camp is really positive, and they're actually really beneficial, and they're clean, and they clean up their garbage, and I never see any needles over there, and they're really good people, and I go over and talk to them, and they're really nice. The city hardly ever gets phone calls like that. However, the number one way to stop a sweep from happening is if they get phone calls like that. Because if they get 400 phone calls about one camp, they know that 3 people are making most of those phone calls. Okay? The city is not stupid. Okay, most of the time. Most of the time, they're not stupid, okay? They are aware of this, okay? If there are people who call the city and say, hey, I know you've been getting complaints about these folks, but I just want to tell you, I don't see anything wrong with them. They're really good people. They've been very helpful. Then that's a good thing, and the city likes that. The city says, yes, one less camp that we have to work with. They like that. Because I've seen their list, and their list is way longer of camps that are going to get swept. They would love to reduce that list. They actually would. So call City Hall. If you have something positive to say about the homeless, call them. If you think that a certain sweep is unfair, call them. And I would say especially call Mayor Hale's office. But there is, if you look online, there is a report line, you can actually even get a report app where you can report homeless people. You can use that to send positive reports. It doesn't have to be negative. Most people use it for negative, but you can use it for positive stuff too. So call Charlie Hale's office, get the report app, or you can just in general call City Hall. And you know who loves to get phone calls? Nick Fish loves phone calls. He loves it. Man, just give him a lot of phone calls. Go ahead. I love Nick Fish. Just my friend. Okay, another thing to do that most of us really hate to do, or actually some of us, I guess, live for it, is those what we call trolls on the internet. I'll tell you the number one place that you can find trolls about homeless on the internet is anytime the Oregonian posts about the homeless. Look at the comments section.
Read the comments section.
I know. The comment section is awful. It's just awful. However, most of those people that are posting the comments are clearly ignorant. And all they need is just someone to inform them. No, obviously they need a hammer to the side of the head. But, but we're not able to do that online, and I don't recommend that. Because I'm a pacifist, so don't be doing those things. You hear me encouraging anybody doing that sort of thing. But but if you get online and you see people who are saying negative things about the homeless, call out their ignorance. How many homeless people do you know? Are you acting under assumptions? Did you know that 70% of all homeless people actually get off the street in less than 2 months? Did you know that that actually 90% of all homeless people do not become homeless because of addiction issues? You can say these things. You can use the information you're getting here and set people straight and give them real information. And if you really want to bug them, if you really want to inform them, then you can get on, you can look up, for instance, there's a nice helpful graph from the National Association of Homelessness. They have a nice little graph talking about major causes of homelessness and the percentages of each one. That's really helpful. And you can post that everywhere. It's great. Use the internet as an opportunity to spread truth, not just to get frustrated at how idiotic people are. It's a combination, but still. Also, make sure that in your everyday conversations, correct false impressions. People say negative things about homeless folks all the time. Just an everyday conversation. People will be passing by and they'll say something nasty about the person who's sitting over by the side of the road, or somebody who's holding a sign. Take the opportunity to politely and nicely correct their false impressions. The thing is that most people feel okay to express their disgust at people who didn't do anything to them because no one's going to correct them. And if you take the opportunity to politely and nicely correct someone, to say, well, actually, that's not true, then they're less likely to say that, and those kinds of opinions are less likely to be spread around. So take the opportunity to politely correct people. Please don't use a hammer. That's not the best way to do it. Just do it politely. And of course, the other thing is what was brought up already. What is it that causes homelessness? The number one thing that causes homelessness, almost the only thing that causes homelessness, is a lack of support network. How do you build a support network so that way people can actually get out of homelessness? Number one, you have to talk to them. They have to be able to talk to people who have resources. Number two, trust has to be built. Here's the thing, is that just like people who are housed often don't trust a stranger who is homeless, the stranger who is, or the person who is homeless is not going to trust a stranger who is housed, because they've been abused by people who are housed. They have been abused by people, some people have been abused by people who come saying, oh, I'm a part of this organization to help you. Let me tell you about an organization that's out there called U.S. Mission. I'm gonna name them, that's right. U.S. Mission goes around and they say, we will provide you with 8 hours of work a day and a place and room and board. And that's true. They will give any homeless person the opportunity for room and board for 8 hours of work a day. This is the work that they do. They get a whole bunch of homeless, they put them in a dorm room, wake them up in the morning, give them breakfast, put them in a car, and take them to a neighborhood. And then say, okay, you go down that street, you go to that street, and you go down that street. And they will go over and they will knock on every door of the street and they will ask for funds for U.S. Mission. They don't get any lunch. They don't get a break. If they don't make any money that day, they don't get to stay. They have to be able to receive funds, otherwise they don't stay in that place. And the person who runs U.S. Mission makes a huge amount of money every year, while while all the homeless people are sleeping in a dorm in barely habitable conditions. Just because an organization says we're here to help the homeless doesn't mean that they are, and homeless people have learned that the hard way. They've had many people come up to them and make promises again and again and again, and those promises are broken. A lot of times by very well-meaning people who really intended to follow through on those promises, but they just never got around to it. Homeless people a lot of times don't trust people even who say, I'm here to help you. They try really hard not to roll their eyes when they hear that, because they don't know the person. So how is it that you build a support network? You build a support network by building mutual trust. And that is only going to happen if you spend time with somebody. I highly, highly recommend that nobody just take somebody on the street and welcome them into their house. If I could make it stronger than recommend, I would. There's an organization downtown, and actually they were here in St. John's for a while, called Night Watch. And they basically just take people and they have conversations with folks on the streets. You get housed people and homeless people, and they're having conversations on the street. And there's this one gal who just really, really felt for this guy who was going to have to sleep on the street in the cold one night. So she went ahead and let him stay in her apartment, and that guy killed her. You can read about it in the Oregonian, it's there. And that is the exception. That almost never happens. But this is why trusting someone, spending time with someone before you make a big jump like that is really important. Because it's really essential to get to know somebody before you give them a big help. You can give anybody food. You can give anybody food. You know, it's really going to be very difficult for them to resell it and use it for something else. You can give anybody, she laughs because she knows it happens sometimes. I said hard, it's difficult. I didn't say it was impossible. But you can give anybody food, but there's a lot of things that you want to get. The more that you learn to know somebody, the more you're able to help them. If you don't know them, you can't actually help them very well. Get to know somebody, build up their trust, listen to their stories, find out who they are. Spend time with them if you can. Take them out to lunch and just talk to them and let them know you as well. And then maybe you can do something else. But the other thing that's really important is to create a support network. Don't just think that you're going to help a homeless person all by yourself. Sometimes it happens. Sometimes one person can be the person who will help somebody get off the street for the rest of their lives. But more often than not, it's going to be a whole group of people. There's one friend of mine, his name is Eric. He lived in his van, and he was looking for a job, but everything was just going horrible for him. He ended up being in Troutdale in the middle of winter, and his car was broke down in the middle of a frozen puddle, and he didn't know what to do. I called my friend here in St. John's, who was a mechanic, and said, "Come on out and take a look at this van." And he says, "Oh, I see what the problem is. It's this." I'm not a mechanic. I don't know what the problem was, but there was a problem with the van, and he knew what it was. And he says, "Oh, and I've got a friend of mine who runs a shop down the street." And so he was able to get another friend of his, tow the vehicle to the shop, and he got his friend to do the work for free. And then we raised some money from people on the internet, about $200, got the part replaced. Boom! He drives out of the place, and the van is running great for 3 miles. And then it broke down again because the mechanic put the part in wrong. So I call my friend in St. John's again and say, "Hey, She helped again, and he comes over and says, oh, the mechanic put the part in wrong. Here, let's tow it back. And the mechanic said, well, really, I'll help you, but I'm not going to pay for the part. The part has to be replaced again, and I'll put it in, but I'm not going to pay for the part. And I'd gotten the money from my Facebook friends. I said, I can't ask him for any more. I've tapped that. I can't do it again. And so my friend Eric was just despondent. He's like, I'm worse off than I was before. I might as well hitchhike somewhere or, go to someplace warmer. But instead what he did is he contacted some church friends that he had, and because this drama had already been happening and he'd been telling them about it, they said, you know what, we're going to help you get this part. They got together the money, they got the part. My friend mechanic was able to get the part from a parts store, put it in there, the mechanic put it in correctly this time, and he drove off and he was fine. And now he was able to get housing because of Join. He was able, and after he got the housing, he was able to find a local job, and he's been working, and now he even has a girlfriend, which was the thing that he most wanted. And so the thing is once again, it was not one person. It was a whole bunch of people that helped Eric. And he is off the street. And you know what? He's going to stay off the street even though he was there for 2 years. He's going to stay off the street because he's got the path down. He's on there. He's going to be great. But it wasn't one person. It was a whole bunch of people. And this is what we need for every single homeless person.